My house is under construction.
Is that your sauna?
Sauna and...
You're so cliche.
What?
Saunas are hot now. We go through extremes. Like it was the ice plunge, and now we're going to the complete opposite.
And you got a new haircut.
I did, yeah.
Looking sharp. This is why people that are just listening to this on audio are really missing
out. You're missing out on my haircut.
Well, I'm really looking forward to watching you thread the needle this week, Brian.
Yeah, no pressure. No pressure.
It's a big topic.
It is. Yeah. Should we get started? Welcome to People vs. Algorithms, show about detecting patterns, media, culture, technology,
saunas.
Mind control,
show about
saunas. I'm Brian Marcy. I'm joined by Troy Young. Troy, welcome.
Thank you, Brian. Nice to be here.
And Alex Schleifer is with us.
Always
Alex is healing. He's recuperating.
Just healing from a broken shoulder.
He is a broken. What is the recovery time there? 4 to 6 weeks?
4 to 6, yeah.
Did you fall off that tower in Abu Dhabi when you were climbing it?
Yeah, that's what happens. I was the fourth cameraman, and I slipped.
Yeah, that was a big Netflix spectacle. And we're going to be talking about spectacles this week.
Where was that? What was the name of that tower? Do you remember?
It wasn't Abu Dhabi, but it should have been. It was in Taiwan.
Where was it?
Yeah, it was the 11th tallest building.
Yeah. So we're going to see a whole bunch of this reality programming until someone dies, and then we'll take a little break.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like, it feels grim watching that. I haven't met someone who was excited to watch it.
Grim? Why? Why?
No, it's so grim. You know what was the grimmest, Alex? Was when he was on like the 88th floor and there was a bunch of people in the observation room knocking on the window and waving at him as he was like being blown around by the wind, climbing a building without ropes. Like, what's he going to do? Wave at you? Like, stop
he did.
He's trying to concentrate.
He waved to his wife. The thing is, he's a professional, and from everything I've read, I don't know anything about it, but from everything I've read, like, it really wasn't that dangerous for someone of his, like, what he did on that El Capitan or whatever, was way more difficult than what he was doing there. He's not even like a free climber of buildings. This is like an actual niche. He was just doing it, I think, for the money and for the thrills. So I love that. Love of the game. Physical bravery is something I want to talk about because I think that's back in
Tom Brady
vogue.
makes more as a broadcaster on 1/4 of football than he made climbing that building.
He made $500,000 from Netflix.
It's a little, I don't know. To me, it's a little bit of a short throw to Hunger Games, Squid Games from there. You know what I mean?
Maybe. But I mean, this is a professional, and so I think it is a little bit different. I get if they were having like the general public climb the building, I might.
Oh man, if they said like the first guy to reach the top gets $500,000, but you all have to like never have done it before, that I'd watch. Honestly,
I think the actual risk of him plummeting to his death are really.
But
fairly low.
I know that's true.
But it's the spectacle.
That's why you watch it, though, which is just like an odd feeling, I find.
Okay, fair enough. I have no segue to this, but AB is not here. He's working on a deal, I'm told. I have a feeling that AB is going to be busy in the year to come. I think he should start a distressed content practice because there's a lot of properties that are for sale or will be for sale in the next year. That's just the reality of a compressing market.
He went through a bankruptcy cycle, so now he's a bankruptcy expert.
Yeah, sure. There's always ways. And I'm going to get into all of that. I've got some new reports for my capitalism book, but I want to start today by talking a little bit about mind control. And I was reminded of this recently because I saw that Jennifer Aniston, I'm late to this, she's dating her hypnotist. The hypnotists have rebranded as hypno coaches, which is interesting. And I feel like I grew up as a child of the 80s at the tail end of a period in which hypnosis was very popular, but it was also very distrusted. And that's because mind control was a big thing, I feel like, in the 70s and 80s. Some of it was like
in the 70s, you just brought back in a really profound memory. So the largest...
when you were in a cult in Canada?
So the largest gathering place in my town is called the Regina Center of the Arts.
Oh,
and it
famous.
probably It probably holds, I don't know, 4,000 people or something like that.
I had this whole spiel about cults. Go on.
Okay, we'll
Okay,
let
so
you
your
go.
uncle
But anyway,
was the first person with a car. Yes.
yeah, okay.
First person in Regina to get
Saskatchewan Centre of the Arts, advertisements on television for the man they call Ravine. The man they call Ravine. And you would all go to the Center of the Arts and he would hypnotize the audience. And it was
It's
a huge
scary.
thing. And
It
to
is
think of
scary.
that now, it sounds ridiculous. I knew that people would gather in a small prairie town, well-meaning, Eastern European immigrants that tilled the harsh soil, and they would put them in a room and collectively hypnotize them. And this was spectacle in my
Wow.
time.
Yeah. Well,
But
I
did
think
it
we've
work?
long been obsessed with mind control, and also because I think we're generally wary of it. And that's what I sort of took away from that era. And I think the modern, obvious version of mind control is algorithms, and it's now AI. And the distrust that has long existed with all institutions is absolutely coming for the algorithms and for AI. We see this pretty much all over the place, I think. And I think it's just natural that we distrust being controlled by others. And I was reminded of that with, I'm starting to see more distrust of algorithms. TikTok this week was the subject of basically a lot. And the problem is they're by their nature, algorithms and these systems are black boxes. And so people can ascribe all kinds of motives to them. And TikTok is now under new ownership. Larry Ellison is prominently involved. He obviously has aligned himself with the Trump administration. So immediately there were accusations that TikTok was suppressing more progressive speech, coverage of ICE in Minnesota, et cetera.
Who would have thunk that, Brian, that a guy that's 85, that looks 60, that owns a private island in Hawaii, that, is kind of bizarre in his kind of character, and now he controls an algorithm, that we would be like, hey, wait a minute, what's going on here?
Well, he bought it at a fair price, though. He bought it at about a one-time revenue, which is totally normal valuation for a tech company, right?
Okay, so we're just asking questions here now. So
No, we're just asking questions. That's totally normal. That's totally normal that somebody buys TikTok for a year's worth of revenue. That's how valuations work in the tech industry. And there was a bidding war as well, right?
Yeah.
Did we see that?
Being so, yeah.
No, it was an
Being
insider
sarcastic.
deal. The Trump administration orchestrated it. And inevitably, I think particularly as technology companies become more entwined with the government, or in this case, this administration, there's going to be further distrust. The distrust that has been sowed, a lot of times, I might add, from these technology leaders themselves in the quote unquote institutional media, this is going to come. Like I always say, don't bring the chimpanzee and put the outfit on him. He's going to rip your face off. And that's inevitably coming for technology. Now, look, tech companies have a lot of advantages. Google is really trusted it's like the most trusted company by consumers in many surveys. So they do have a lot of room to run, right? But I think this backlash does say something about how algorithms and AI will inevitably be distrusted. It's just natural to me.
Why do you think Google is so trusted?
I don't know. It's a good question.
I think it's because it's a tool we use that gives
Yeah.
us what we want. I think it doesn't feel like it's giving us things that we don't understand. It feels like it's doing a service for us. And, I think that's true in Gmail. That OG Gmail move when they gave you all the storage for free, that was a great trust creator. The fact that you use search, it doesn't use you, is a trust creator. Over time, they've been the company that has given us, wondrous technology in ways that made life better. And I think that creates trust.
That's true. Although they did this week pay us $68 million to settle a lawsuit that it recorded private conversations to use for ad targeting. So maybe these conspiracies are all true. They are listening to you for the ads.
Yeah. I mean, I think Google has as many reasons to be distrusted as anyone else, but they've done a really good job at just not, putting anyone, there's no person at the helm that seems to be making decisions. It seems to be kind of this big amorphous thing. You used it every day for 20 years. I think people generally like see the results as trustworthy, which is great for them. I mean, same with YouTube. And meanwhile, Facebook, Meta has had like plenty of distrust since 2016, I would say. What do you think? I mean, I don't think the distrust thing is particularly new.
No, not. I mean, but I think it's more broadly. I believe it's accelerated, but I could be wrong. I mean, Jack Dorsey this week, who's an imperfect messenger. Let's be real. But he came out of his cabin. I'm sure it's a modernist cabin. It's probably amazing.
I think he wakes up every 2.5 years feeling irrelevant, and then tries to implant himself into the.
He's at least an interesting character, I feel like. But he was talking about, bringing transparency to these algorithms and allowing people to have control of this. Because again, I think that comes down to the mind control is when you don't have control over what kind of algorithm is presenting information to you, you're literally giving control over to some other entity. And those entities are architected by humans. And the idea that algorithms are unbiased and humans are biased, it has always been ludicrous and something that you sell to low information.
Absolutely.
We fled the gatekeepers, Brian, because we didn't trust them. They were humans. Yeah. We went to the algos.
Yes.
Now we don't trust them. But you know what? I love what you said about Jack, you guys, because he is like the techno Ted Krasowski. Kaczynski.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's got a message for you, and you're not going to like it.
Yeah, but here's the thing, right? Like since 2016 and a little bit earlier, we've been like this kind of mistrust of social media specifically, and algorithm has been, in the public conversation. But I feel like we've tried all this. We've tried giving you more control and give me back the linear feed. Turns out that people don't want them. And turns out that when you're fully algorithmic, you can make a bunch more money. So at this stage, what he's talking about is the healthy cigarettes. I wish we could just give kids healthy cigarettes, finally. That's what he's saying. And maybe what's changing is that people notice that there are no healthy algorithms and that all our algorithms are like have an opinion and are editorial decisions. And algorithms will also be skewed to like improve the bottom line of these companies. Like,
hey, these are healthy cigarettes, dum-dum.
Zins. Yeah, he's holding up Zins, by the way, which we're still not getting paid for all that advertising. But when it comes to like, so OpenAI is facing that position of trust right now, right? They need to be trusted specifically as an AI agent where people ask them about health and family and how they should deal with their, friendship that's falling apart or whatever. They're putting advertising in there is that the ads will never influence the results, right? But at some point, somebody is going to figure out that like, hey, you know what? Like when somebody asks us for this recipe, we have this big deal with Whole Foods. And Whole Foods doesn't have this type of cabbage, right? So if we change the recipe, then we can advertise this type of like canned cabbage, and that's an extra $8 million. Like all of these things are going to start. All algorithms are modifying themselves to improve revenue, to improve engagement, to do these things, and people maybe are just wising up to the fact that it's never good for them at the end user.
Well, particularly when they start with AI, when AI starts to, create itself, like, we're getting to that point, and I think we're seeing evidence that it is accelerating where, AI is taking control of a lot of decisions. Like it's not literally a human who's making decisions. And, did you guys see the Clawdbot? This is an interesting, it was a cool, like open source project that was created that a lot of the nerd set were getting Mac Minis in order to run. You can explain it better than I can, Alex.
Yeah, first a PSA. It is now called it is now called the Moltbot because Claude, written like a lobster claw, of course. Anthropic, sent them a cease and desist.
Which, by the way, is fair. It's fair from
it's absolutely fair. Here's the issue.
Did you install it, Alex? I installed it. Lots of crypto.
Well, this is my PSA, right? First of all, Crypto Grifter got on like capturing all the names that mentioned Clawdbot and trying to launch coins and things like that. So be careful out there. Number two, this is for if you need to be technically proficient with that. You can open up a massive massive security hole to your entire life by doing stuff like that.
Because basically it is trusting, it is giving over control of your computer, basically.
Yeah,
to
I mean,
a third
you
party.
should install it on a separate instance, and you shouldn't give it any of your accounts. But even there, you're giving a machine control to make decisions based on prompts that you make it. But it could go haywire. More likely, some bad actor could come in and hijack it. Like we're living in a world now where a lot of this stuff is going to start happening. So the agents are coming, and it's going to be a bit of a mess, I think. So be careful.
Yeah, I think that
Troy,
Clawdbot is actually. Yeah, I did it, Alex, and
how did it go?
It didn't go well.
Okay.
So what I was doing is I was being coached in real time by Claude to do terminal access to my computer and try to type in a bunch of commands that I didn't understand. And then what would follow would be a long list of activity at the core level of my machine. I felt vulnerable for sure. And then I was like,
you might still be, I don't know. You were kind of raw dogging the internet.
Yes. The question
You felt like
for
they
me
gave you
was
like that feeling right after they give you the hospital gown.
I was like
it's
wait,
a vulnerable feeling.
I want to be a lifelong learner, etc. But like, I'm going to waste, a week of my time to try to get it to like automate an email send or book a meeting. Like I can already do that on my phone. So, but I think that Clawdbot is really about agency in some ways because it's builds trust through use and seeing that you're controlling the agent on your computer, right? I think that there's a kind of hands-on AI notion around Clawdbot that says you're not, it's not running on someone else's server, it's running on your server, and you've authorized it to connect to your services.
That's a big pitch. That's
but isn't that necessary? I mean, that's like FSD, right? Like, I mean, you have to get to this point where you trust giving over control to the bot.
Yeah.
Like, and that's why they have a driver who was sitting in Waymo initially, just like sitting there. And then all of a sudden, like people are clamoring to get in Waymos. That trust has gone completely in the opposite direction. In fact, people will even pay more to have Waymos than they will to have like a human driving.
Yeah,
I think that's an interesting data point.
It takes
I
you
wonder
like
how
3
much
rides.
trust.
It takes you 3 rides to get there. I think the first ride you feel like you're in a Jetsons movie. The second ride you're trying to look at all the detail. The third ride you're just checking your phone and this is totally normal.
And having sex.
Well, they'll stop you from doing that. But yeah.
How do they know, Al? How do they know?
They have cameras. Everybody's got cameras. Everybody's watching everyone. Sucks.
LiDAR.
I guess you and I won't be taking a Waymo soon.
Yeah. Well, they already developed that technology with YouTube, and that's how it became a massive ad business. They can find a nipple anywhere.
Well, guys, anyway, it's interesting. I think the Clawdbot observation for me was we are about to see a lot of wild things with tech as the capability of AI kind of percolates through, humanity. And so, a guy built something kind of incredible. It is a really cool application of the technology. And he did it in a few weeks. And you're going to see tons of that this year. You're going to see a ton of dispersed innovation. And I think that the difference between like Clawdbot is like the ham radio of AI, right? Versus what I thought was interesting yesterday was Elon reframing Tesla in the quarterly call by saying that the new mission of the company is sustainable abundance, in which you are placing your trust in a weird guy who's going to like give you a robot that can learn instantly and transform, the production lines of Tesla into a robot factory. And, so much so that he claimed that it would shift American GDP. So it's like, wait, we're going to get robots in our house that we truly don't understand that are going to do all, what are they going to do? Do they have cameras? Are they watching me? We're on the precipice of something mind-bending. Like we're all it's so embedded now. And then it becomes manifest in a robot in your house.
I know,
it's going to make you not want for anything.
Let's pump the brakes. I see these robots in action in Miami Beach, and trust me, they're not taking control anytime soon. They cannot control delivering a burrito.
Right. I cannot believe like that I'm going to be that guy. But like if you watch CES today, everybody had a fucking robot. And all those robots were ridiculous and couldn't fold a napkin. And the gap between there and having a robot walking around and, making us breakfast is pretty wide. Now, will it happen? Maybe, but society will be very different in 10, 20, 15 years when it happens, right? This is like that last mile that takes you 2 decades. And as it happens, we're going to start freaking out about things that, that are not particularly important to us today. And the problem is right now is that we have machines that can do really incredible things. I think Clawdbot is an example of how even without the LLM models reaching AGI, if you're quite smart about it, you could build a little agent that runs in the computer and acts as an executive assistant pretty well. But what CES showed us as well is that like China's manufacturing capabilities are amazing. We can build all this shit. We can build drones and robots and stuff, but the software is not even there. The amount of things that just ran into walls and did all this stuff, navigating a home is like, way more complicated than a Waymo driving around San Francisco. And so it's going to be different, but I think that the big difference is going to be like in the software that we use and how like we start using agentic systems and the amount of things that we're going to start seeing break. Because like, being able to have agents to like check your email is great, but being able to have agents that like know every single exploit in the world and try to hack every single computer 24/7 for you to see if they can find your credit card number, the amount of emails that I'm getting already today that AI generated, all of that stuff, that's going to be some of the negative stuff we're going to see. And that's going to really start building mistrust with computers in general, with technology in general.
I think just to echo what Troy said earlier, I don't say this with any great thrill, but I think Ted Kaczynski's beliefs might get like revisited. Not his techniques, but I think Uncle Ted, there's a reason like they didn't want to publish his manifesto.
Yeah, so, it's just that, but this trust vacuum.
We're pro Unabomber on this podcast.
I'm not pro Unabomber. I'm just saying like.
Just a minute, guys. This trust vacuum that you're articulating is really fascinating because we're living in a time of deep confusion and we're looking for signals. And the algorithm is opaque and it's comfortable, but we don't really know how it's changing our brains. And then, amidst all of this, you have an ultimate symbol of low trust, which is a masked person. Masking is about no trust. You don't trust people that wear masks because they're hiding something. And you have these violent juxtapositions in society of like masked ice guy versus, scarved, toqued, hapless Minnesotan, right? And we try, and we're like, that's right, this is wrong. And those juxtapositions are changing the way we feel about things really, really quickly. And I think that's what's so interesting. Do we trust Elon when he says his robots are going to, create sustainable abundance? What is it that we're looking to our leaders for this, right? And so we're like, where the fuck were you, Tim Cook, when all this shit went down? You were at the screening of Melania in the White House. That's not a high trust signal, which then forces him to kind of go back to the infinity loop and tell people, that he had a nice conversation with Trump and told him not to be an asshole. And you have the same thing with the hedging is amazing. Sam Altman saying, Trump is a great leader, but, he's gone off the rails a little bit, like I'm on your side, people. And so we have these people that have enormous amounts of power and we don't know if we should trust them.
I think that's a great point and a great segue, Troy. Great segue. Kudos to you, because what is going on right now in Minnesota is obviously an obscenity. At least to me it is. And I do think the narrative has turned this week. And a lot of I think the fundamental, there's been many mistakes, but I think in losing control of the narrative, that masking will come back to haunt the Trump administration. Because just like you said, people don't trust masks. And there is that juxtaposition that anyone can understand immediately of seeing someone who is standing up to masked power. It's crazy. And so that's why Trump's approval ratings have reversed in all demographics. And I think it comes down to how this has been implemented. I know I've gotten notes about it, about like, people saying, I had someone who sent me a note saying that like, one, that I've been sucking up to ad tech forever. And I was like, I don't think so. But
Good point.
Only when it's part of a deliverable, but like but also that like you've not been like speaking out about like ICE, and this is a problem for not just for minor podcasters, but particularly for the leaders in these organizations who have been trying to be very acrobatic with how they're responding to this environment. And, ultimately they're going to have to pick a lane, and they're going to have to figure out how much they're going to go along with. I think Dario Omadai has like emerged as a really interesting figure in Silicon Valley, because the narrative around AI has really moved in the direction of Anthropic. And, he dropped another one of his 20,000 word treatises this week. Anthropic has a constitution, by the way, which is fairly interesting. And of course, it was partially written by AI.
And a philosopher.
And it will come down to trust.
Yeah, I mean, I think Anthropic's been doing a great job actually since the beginning of baking that into all of the narrative. But yeah, the idea that like we're meant to trust these algorithms, but are run by these people who are either outwardly untrustworthy. I don't know if you guys ever had the pleasure of listening to Alex Karp, CEO of Palantir, but that just scared the shit out of you. And now, we're seeing just, masked people with guns in the streets pulling people out of schools. And here's the thing that kind of like the Tim Cook stuff. I think there's no such thing as fuck you money, huh? All of these people have fuck you money, but I'm totally unable to say fuck you. Like it's so odd to watch all these people squirm and participate and give little trophies.
I think you're better off doing fuck you when you live in a cabin.
Well, yeah. So you have to.
Okay, so you're back to the Unabomber?
No, you have to. Yes, because Ted. Okay, you have to be. It's like I already realized.
For the audio listener,
I actually interviewed one.
Brian just showed us a tattoo of Ted
Kaczynski.
No, I interviewed actually one of his victims one time, a computer scientist, David Galerner, and he was maimed by.
Yeah, no, we all agree that he was not a good guy.
Very bad guy.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, and honestly, he just needed a Substack to get his message out there. He didn't have to
should have had a Substack for sure.
He didn't have to blow people up.
You know what? The narrative
probably a beehive though. Probably a beehive because we're
Beehive would have done the trick.
Would have been better.
He probably would have gone to Beehive.
He wanted that more control over the design.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Vietnam took years to turn. These ones are, because everybody creates content and, everybody's broadcasting a grad student being detained or a 5-year-old being thrown in the back of a van. The narrative shifts fast, and you got masked people, as the new enemy. And suddenly we realize that Trump has failed in creating an external enemy that we can rally against. The enemy is us. And that's the narrative shift. We feel like the enemy is us. And in that context, there's going to be mass resistance. That's the power. Because
people don't feel good. That's that meme, the "Are we the bad Klaus? Are we the baddies?" meme. But I don't think that a lot of the loudest voices are helping. Like I don't think like Elon, Thiel, Karp, Zuckerberg, Bezos, Altman. I don't think they have high trust value with people, do they? Like the Melania documentary was funded by Amazon. They spent $40 million on it. Tim Cook said the thing. Like, then, they give TikTok to their friends. Like, it's all, I mean, I think it's cumulative on top of that, right? I think the foundation is rife for like people say, we don't trust these people. Isn't it?
Well, I think, part of it is, there's always like a hangover, right? And tech is one of the most powerful institutions, and it is an institution. Big technology is a power center. When we say institutions, that's in America, that's just a nice way of saying power centers. Like, because we're
bigger than the media,
immature.
Right?
Yeah. And so if we have distrust in all power centers, because that's what it really is, why in the world would we not have distrust of this power center, which is the biggest power center, arguably, right now?
Yeah.
Hey,
well,
you're going to have
Brian, it would. I hate to steal the moderation here for a second, but
okay.
I would lead you to the point that you made because you're reading that big fat capitalism book of modern analogies to the Potosi mine.
Oh yeah,
and it may be an imperfect AI versus strip mining human intelligence versus kind of genocide. But
Can I describe the Potosi
perpetrated
mine for
by the
people?
Spanish and the church with total impunity, by the way.
This is the 16th century. This was a massive silver mine that sprung up in what's now Bolivia. It was one of the biggest cities in America. It had a population bigger than London at the time, which is amazing.
And Paris.
Just sprang up out of nowhere. Silver enabled capitalism to happen because it was required to be able to financialize the system. There were a few wrinkles. It was dependent on forced labor by indigenous populations. They would send people by force down into the mines to haul back up over 100 pounds of silver on their backs.
I'm not sure they provided masks.
No, there was no masking, and it turns out there was a lot of carcinogens down there. About a 50% mortality rate for these coerced workers, and possibly, I think when I was reading it, I was like, that was a sign of things to come. Because I always say it's not called workerism for a reason. And I think now to me, the analogy, just like you said, was that, algorithms plus AI are the ultimate extractive technology. And I don't think the people that operated the Potosi mine back then were necessarily quote unquote evil. I think that's a really immature way of seeing things, also very American. In fact, they were just responding to the incentives of the system. And the incentives that are being lined up right now, particularly when you don't need labor to produce economic productivity, are to get rid of labor. I was struck. I saw one of these. I'm still trying to quit X, but I saw one of these.
What was the competing
clips.
power structure against the evil Spanish, mine owners? There was
there weren't any.
There weren't any.
Yeah, this is like Silicon Valley. It's great, monopoly. I saw this clip of one of these fast talking AI guys. They're on 2.5 speed, I find. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about basically around how AI is going to mean that governments and power centers do not actually need people. That really in modern times, regular people have been treated quite nicely because they've been needed. They've been needed to go into the mines to extract things. But once they're not needed, then the game is going to become how do they organize into interest groups in order to petition to get handouts and whatnot. And he started, what was really bracing was when he started referring to legacy humans as opposed to synthetic humans. So we're all legacy humans.
It's just first principles thinking, Brian.
Yes.
These guys you could use the terms like legacy humans, seriously, without acknowledging how ridiculous it is, really do scare me.
Yeah.
Do you know them, Alex? You have dinner with them, don't you?
I try to avoid dinner with them, but you overhear them once in a while. You're having brunch and these two 26-year-olds are talking how they would solve the economical issues in Myanmar because they know. I feel like incentives is the things that we should always go back to. And where you were talking about algorithms, all of these things run on incentives. And having seen behind the curtains, the incentives can always lead to, downstream effects that, aren't great for people. That's the thing that happens.
Yeah, it is all incentives. And
I just want to echo a point that was made, that I made earlier, actually, that this time of great confusion. And I felt confused this week by listening to the analyst, Silicon Valley analyst, and man who's made a kind of brand of himself for being the kind of, reasonable voice on AI, Paul Kudrowski. Are you familiar with Paul?
I know him, the economist.
Yeah, he's an analyst and he, advises hedge funds and stuff. And he's smart. But, like many of us or many people get trapped in what their brand of punditry is. So his particular brand right now is to say that this is a massive bubble. And so all things must, support that argument. And he was on Henry Blodgett's podcast this week talking about why the economics of, AI and data centers are inevitably bad and how it must lead to a crash. And then you contrast that with the kind of flooding the zone that, say, A16 does, and the archetypical kind of first principle thinker that is an A16 partner, talking about why this is, the beginning of an economic miracle, and how, if anything, AI is underhyped. And so I think that, as sort of civilians in the middle of this, we're really confused. Like, what should I be doing? And I feel this confusion personally because I don't know what to tell my kids other than the like basic shit, like, you guys better get good at using AI and figure out how to become empowered by this technology. It's inevitable. And if you don't, you're going to be without
everything
without
falls
a job
into
or
cliche.
career.
Be adaptable, be high agency.
And so, and they're going, and my kids, because they're, mid to late 20, two of them, and one of them kind of just getting into the workforce, are really, really baffled right now about where a lot of the paths that were there for us, whether you were sort of, right brain, left brain, and therefore, you were tailor-made for a future in the marketing, creative, advertising, media world, or, you were, naturally, I don't know, absorbed by a system in all kinds of ways, whether you were, great at math or great at writing. Mm-hmm. And right now, I just don't know where people go. It's really troubling. I don't know what advice to give them.
I mean, I think that the messaging itself, what you end up reading, what your kids end up reading, because it's filtered through algorithms, ends up in extremes, right? So it's very hard to find a path, which is usually kind of somewhere in the middle. And, you talk to tech people here and they say, well, what I'm building into my kids is resiliency and, like curiosity and knowing that they also have a trust fund. But one thing's for sure is like, they don't expose their kids to a bunch of technology. They don't expose their kids to all that anxiety that's being fed to you. Yeah, my YouTube stream is either people saying, if you're not gaining 24 hours a day of productivity using Clawdbot, you're fucking a loser, And the other side is like, everything's doomed.
There's a meme that you have like 6 months to 3 years to acquire, to amass and accumulate as much capital as you can, because that's the only thing that matters. And it's like you've got, like you're on the clock.
I mean, it's a double. It's a double tap of like COVID, and then the algorithms has made us all crazy. And so the main thing is like, if you go around the world and you walk around the world and you talk to people and you get your head out of Twitter, like there are jobs out there. There are things people do. They transact. They live everyday life. They don't let this stuff get to them that much, which is to me like comforting at the very least, right? I don't know how crazy the world is actually compared to how it's represented through us through like the.
Wait, you were the guy who was telling us like 2 years ago that the spaceship was over the White House, and now you're telling us to go live like an agrarian life in Europe.
Oh, it is. I mean, and for media, hasn't it turned true for media and for these tech companies becoming more powerful and the rich becoming richer, and a total like reconfiguration of what truth is or how we look at computing or like, sure. But like, there's a world outside of that. You know what I mean? No, it's way healthier,
Well,
like,
yeah. I mean, my view is colored by, I think you're taking a shot at me for spending too much time on X. It's X now,
I'm not
by the
taking
way.
a shot.
Excuse me. It's X.
And I don't know when you're going to hit your bottom, but Troy and I will be there.
No, I'll be there with Brian.
Look, I can quit anytime I want. I can quit whenever I want.
A deep X addiction right now.
I've noticed.
If you haven't
WhatsApp
noticed it
just, oh my God,
filled with X posts.
It's just like, there's just too much stuff that doesn't really matter. Like, I feel like I quit social media, on and off, and I still do it for work. But I find out about stuff that happened 2 or 3 weeks ago that I would like usually kind of jump on. It doesn't fucking matter.
Do you know what I fell for this week? I shared like an AI meme about about fart maxing. It was about a guy who ate tofu and beans for lunch to such a degree that he was trying to fart max in the office and he got fired for it. And then, of course, I informed my wife, who has a PhD, of this development, and she was like, that's AI. And I felt, and it reminded me, because it was the first time I've fallen for that, I think, knowingly. And it was a really bad feeling. And it felt like there was it was my wife, so I don't think, but there was like a social cost then. And I think there's still weirdly a social cost, one of like falling for this stuff. So everyone has to be hyper vigilant. And I think that really is taxing mentally. And then also, there's still an incredible social cost at using AI for creative work. I'm still struck by the fact that in coding, you have people like Andre Karpathy who are saying, now I'm just orchestrating. I'm not even using the autocomplete of coding. Coding is over. You just have to, I'm just using English. That's my coding language. Whereas you would never hear a writer, or I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, like a designer who is like, oh yeah, I just write into Figma, like what to do. Like, why is that?
Well, there are some engineers who feel a little bit more attached to the craft, right, in quotes.
Oh, the Ted Kaczynski types.
However, I think look, coding has been created on layers of abstraction since the beginning, right? The first one you used to weld your own chips, then they gave you cards, then somebody, let you program something. All of these things are cheats, right? If you were like a hardcore coder, why aren't you forging your own metal? And even when you look at modern languages like Python and stuff like that, they abstract a lot of the computer machine language that happens in the background. So there's a more natural path between that and saying, well, it should all turn into English because we're trying to make these languages easier and easier. At some point, these languages will become English, right? So there's a little bit of a natural thing there. When it comes to art and writing and human expression, right, which I think, I don't know, you could say that coding is human expression. I think it makes us feel icky. I think that type of stuff, like a machine replacing the thing that we create through art, like even there, like layers of abstraction are less accepted, right? Like, so computer synthesizer music is a thing, but people still appreciate people playing live, people turning knobs. I mean, even DJs, right, who don't do that much, right, kind of like performatively, like.
I like that they're dancing around and dancing on top of it.
Yeah, and
like,
look, and I DJ,
really
and I like doing it, but like part of it, you're like being partially a hype man for the music, and that's fine because people want that connection to the human expression, the ability to make mistakes and stuff like that. And I think these are two different paths. Are there engineers that think like coding belongs in the art bucket? Sure. And they can still do that. But that's why I think there's a difference there. And I think it's correct.
Brian, I wanted to bring it back to some hardcore media topics. I mean, I have at the end, under good product, we can hit the fart videos. Because I did.
Oh,
see
you
one.
also done fart
Is that
magazine?
the AI fart video?
Oh, well, I like.
I'm not on your boomer networks, so
I like a good fart video. The one I saw this week that made me laugh was, it was a fart that was the first two notes of Chris Isaac's Wicked Game, and it was like no. Anyway, it went from those two notes, and then the music came on, and that I thought was fun.
Curing cancer still to come.
We'll get back to that at in the good product segment. But Brian, every leader that goes into a media company, and Brian, you and I were introduced to this idea this week collectively in what might become, maybe a little side project for us. But the idea that, someone new has to come into a company and explain that, what they're making isn't purpose built for the way people are consuming now. And that as a result, everything has to change and many people have to go away and they have to completely rethink the mechanics of their media operation is very interesting. And I say this as someone who had to kind of participate in being that kind of evangelism and change maker and disruptor in organizations that don't want to change for lots of reasons. Anyway, to watch Barry Weiss try to explain to CBS, the people at CBS, why what they're doing won't work or will lead to irrelevance, I thought was really fascinating this week. In my mind, it was explaining the fundamental difference between the kind of podcasting mind and the network mind. And that we are, there's this sort of almost, I don't know, maybe imperfect term, but the podcastification of network television is such a profound change. And I thought, and I'll take the other side here, I thought she did a really good job, something that I had never seen done by an executive in, network television, to explain why they're quickly heading to irrelevance. Maybe that's the obvious, and what they have to do as a result in terms of the kinds of stories they chase, and how they render those stories, right? And so the differences to me have just always been so fundamental, right? Podcasts are an on-demand media format. Getting on the air isn't the win. Getting attention is the win, right? Where podcasting is this sort of unfiltered mind versus scripts and lighting and makeup and teleprompters. And, that credibility is about your audience relationship, not the position you're in when you become a, CBS News anchor. And they're not these kind of one-way relationships. They're, I don't know, parasocial relationships where you feel like you know us. And so how like fast and flawed versus slow and fake, what Alex refers to as baby news, they just don't mix very easily. And so to watch kind of Barry lay that out and say, basically, we need to turn CBS News into the podcasting network and bring on all kinds of talent and all this stuff, I think is really interesting. It'll be, I'm sure she'll make progress. Whether or not she survives it is TBD, but I thought it was really interesting. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, she did say, there's this sort of unvarnished truth. Will Lewis tried this, didn't go well for him. He tried the nobody is reading your stuff. Barry's variation of that was we're not producing stuff that people want. And this is, a lot of these things with media I'm always struck with is they sound very simple and they're common sense because this is an execution business. And that it's like, who's going to object to it? It's like, oh, you got to make stuff that people want. Oh, people have to have loyalty to you. And I find this all the time when I'm like writing about it, because I'm like, this is like pretty basic stuff.
But my question is like, what's next? The reason podcasts work is because the economics of shooting a podcast are really low. And so, yeah, man, you can get an AG1 advertising deal and make a bunch of money, but you don't have a network TV to sustain. Sure. So what are you saying? We should shut this down and all individually go into our bedrooms and start recording podcasts? Yeah, that would work.
Yeah, I think this is like...
the question, Alex, is how difficult are the trade-offs? And if you did execute the plan that I sort of roughly described, would you end up just being, economic flotsam on YouTube? You know what I mean? You risk giving away all your value to the network layer.
Sure, yeah. But I mean, that's where everything is going, right? The pressures are coming down to creating more and more content more cheaply because you need to get more views to generate less money. And so I feel like people are looking at podcasts now and they're looking at YouTube that's the promised land. But there's a reckoning coming there too, right? As, more AI tools, et cetera, are going to force more content down the path and individual creators get less and less views and get less and less kind of power to bargain on advertising or even all of that stuff is, the end game here that all of these platforms want is everybody to get their 15 minutes of fame and nobody to make a fucking set because anybody that gets established, you kind of make less revenue on it and the ROI is worse. So I don't know what is, I'm not saying she's wrong that nobody listens to this shit, but and what? What are you going to do? What's the plan?
Well, that's what she articulated if you had read what I sent around on WhatsApp.
Yeah, I did read it. I mean,
you summarized it.
Here's the problem, right? My data might be wrong, but Good Morning America, Robin Roberts, is that a person?
It's Gail King on CBS.
Gail King? Okay.
Good Morning America is ABC.
Oh, Good Morning
Robin
America.
Roberts.
Good Morning. Yeah.
That was missed in the summary.
That was Gail King.
An hallucination.
Is it the same? It's not the same show. Was the other one is Good Morning America? I don't even fucking watch it. But these people are getting paid 16.
Well, you're joined by a lot of people.
Gail King is getting paid $16 million.
No, they got $13 million.
$13 million.
Well, yeah, that needs to be fixed, and that will be fixed.
Yeah.
The compression comes to everyone.
That's where you can kind of start saving money.
Well, you can save money, but the question is, how do you grow? And I think all of these businesses,
you don't grow it, you shrink it down. that CBS News needs to be shrunk down to its smallest unit, stay very boring and true to whatever they're doing, and then they need to open a whole. It's like you've got factories building car engines with oil, and these are kind of gonna go out of fashion at some point, but you got to keep it running for a while. So you shrink that down to the most minimum, and then you say, here's this brand new shit we're building. It's something completely new with the money that we're saving.
You give it a name, Alex. Sustainable abundance.
Sustainable.
So I think that is the challenge, Troy, right? I mean, like, how do you operate the old business that is just going into terminal decline, and you have to manage it? Like, I mean, my brother-in-law looks after like mainframe data centers that are not yet in the cloud. Like, they still exist. They're out there. They need to be deprecated. They have contracts that legally require them to be operated for decades. And so they have to do this transition. This is part of the transition, and it is not like an inspiring message to the troops that we're in the business of, extracting the value in these assets that are in terminal decline. How do you go to a workforce with that message? You simply can't. Can you? Maybe you should.
Partly. I think that's what she did. I mean, by saying that no one's watching your shit, you're saying that, we're in terminal decline. I think that's the whole...
No, but the message is, we're going to turn it around. We're going to bring in independent voices. We're going to bring in podcasters. I still hold that this is Marissa Mayer. She wasn't going to turn around Yahoo, not because of Marissa Mayer, but just because it couldn't be. Like, the only way, and Yahoo is, in a way better position right now because they shrank a lot and they have a path
and because they're not public anymore.
Yeah.
I'm curious, and I will do it this week, to tune in, never back, but tune into CBS News and to see what they're making. And I don't think that the way back for me, someone like me, is to say I'm going to watch the news on television. I'm just doing it, as a curiosity. But it's like, are they going to make podcasts, YouTube videos, Instagram stories, emails that somehow re-engage me? Are they going to do that on the back of the free press? And I think it is a daunting task. And while I've got the mic for one sec, I would say it reminded me, Brian, today of how, when I called you earlier, how great a job the Atlantic has done in that transformation. Because they have taken, what was probably a great legacy institution, but really modernized it, via talent and, monetized through subscriptions, and now fanning out into podcasting. They announced today that they hired David Brooks.
Yeah, nobody used to give up the New York Times opinion page sinecure without dying.
Yeah, I just feel like, and listen, maybe they had, the safety of, a rich benefactor to make that transition easier. But that hasn't worked for Washington Post. And, I would argue that's been difficult at time. There's these two paths that we're seeing now, which is few can get the high road path where they re-energize their content creation machine to live in this, new set, in a different landscape, or you just, live in a world where these are harvestable assets. And I
it's
think
whether you're going to go the growth path or the private equity path. Let's be real. That's what it is. And nobody is honest about going down the PE path except for the PE guys. I give them credit for their honesty, because a lot of times these assets, you tell the workforce that you're sending down into the mines that, no, we're going to turn this around. It's going to be growth. We're going to get Andrew Huberman on 60 Minutes, and that's going to be good. When the reality is, for a lot of these, is that they have to go down the path, I'll say it, Troy, of Forbes. They need to be unsentimental, and they need to, and the path is financializing these assets. It's sometimes not, becoming, but these are businesses. And as long as they're going to operate as businesses, unless you're going to find a benevolent billionaire, and there are not many out there, you're going to have to find the value. And a lot of that is going to be in harvesting. That's why AB is going to be busy.
That's right.
The Atlantic has done an amazing job under Lorraine Powell Jobs. And, I remember in 2020, she got a lot of heat because they cut 70 people, which in the Atlantic is a sizable portion of their workforce, as they reoriented this business. They dropped their video. They were doing like really expensive video, not video podcasts at the time. They got out of a lot of they overhauled their events infrastructure because they were doing a lot of these small events that are part of the, DC feeding trough. And they really saw that subscriptions were the path forward. The only way you win at subscriptions is you're completely audience focused, and you have to burn the boats with a lot of the other stuff. Now, she gave them cover and license clearly to be able to make that transition. And most publications don't have that. That's reality. And most aren't going to be able to take that high road.
Yeah, I think there's an open question in the market, Brian, as to whether you can go free to paid. Like, can you build up a broad, free media business and then navigate back to paid? Or do what, say, someone like Puck's done and just grow from the beginning a vertically focused, talent-focused paid business? And that's the semaphore question. I think that's a tough one.
Yes, Alex had a hard stop, by the way. He dropped out. I think there is two schools of thought. I think the semaphore argument against, I guess, the Puck argument would be, look at the New York Times, look at Bloomberg. Bloomberg was able to navigate a shift to a paywall just fine. They've got a robust paywall now. And I think that there are advantages, obviously, to conditioning the audience from the beginning. And there are also advantages in the marketplace, even with an indirect revenue model that
it's interesting to look at how Bloomberg did it. They did it with just raw inevitability. They cover so much. I hit their paywall more than anybody. I hit their paywall every day. It's so annoying.
Yeah. And they're not great. They're not great at remembering you're logged in. That's something that has long frustrated me. On the other hand, we have the Washington Post. So the Washington Post is just perpetually mired in problems. I don't even remember when it wasn't. I mean, it seems like a generation ago that we were writing at Digiday about how the New York Post had a bigger ComScore audience than the New York Times. Those were simpler times. And the Washington Post is making, I guess on the one hand, you could look at it as difficult decisions. They're pulling out of their Olympics coverage. They're really cutting into sports and other coverage areas. And this is difficult to pull off because, for a simple reason, I don't know what the Washington Post wants to be. And the Washington Post...
Well, it's a political publication because they, like many, live in a company town. And not only has there been a tremendous amount of competition in that space, for a long time with Politico and Axios and Punchbowl and Semaphore and Puck. But it's hard, I think, to do an open heart values transplant in a company and not just live with, the kind of years of agita that creates. That's just a huge distraction to progress.
Yeah, it's been a very rough path there. And Sean Griffey actually made a really good point. He's the former CEO of Industry Dive, and they're really one of the few winners of the last, era of digital media with Industry Dive. They had a massive exit, like $500+ million in, an unglamorous area. I think Sean would agree with that, which is B2B. And they went deep into, markets like waste and energy, whatnot. But he made the point, he just going through the Washington Post product, there's just a lack of discipline there. They're not doing the simple things right. And that's what I mean by this being like an execution business. Like, you go to their food coverage, it doesn't make sense. And they're not organized properly. And, that I think betrays it doesn't really matter the strategy, I feel like, in media. If you're not executing on the basics, you don't have a shot. Whereas you'd compare that to the tech industry, which usually operates in completely different markets, and they can make a ton of mistakes. You just don't have room for the kind of errors in this business, and particularly in this market that's in severe compression. You just can't cover it up, I feel like. One interesting thing that I noticed is the Philadelphia Inquirer is profitable, which...
Yeah, who cares?
Well, if you're from the Philadelphia area, you care to a large degree. I think, making local news work is an important endeavor.
Other than you and a nice sandwich, I'm still trying to figure out what's great about Philly.
We can go over that in a different episode. Look, people from Philly have a lot of pride in being from Philly. I've noticed a lot of them don't still live in Philadelphia, but that is a strange juxtaposition. But it's in a nonprofit model. Lenfest is its backer. And look, what's going on in Minnesota right now and in Minneapolis really is testament to the need for strong local news.
Totally.
And so I hope that local news finds a model. Perhaps Lisa Hughes has found one. I'm going to try to get her on the Rebooting Show to discuss how they got to profitability. But good news. Did you see Kanye? I guess he's Ye. Is it Ye or Ye? I mispronounce everything.
I think Ye. Let's go with Ye.
It should be Ye, though. Ye took out a full-page ad in the Wall Street Journal to make an apology. He blames...
Usually when people take out full-page ads to say, I'm not insane anymore, you don't believe them.
Well, I found it interesting that he decided to take the ad out. Like, he could have just, published a post or,
taking out a full page in the Wall Street Journal is always the end of the run PR move. It's like, we got to do the ultimate thing. Bring out the bomb. We're going to take out a full page ad in print.
It's not scalable. But I did immediately when I saw it, beyond the substance of the apology and whether to believe it or not, or to believe that he had brain damage that caused his bipolar disorder and caused him to say all those anti-Semitic and crazy things. That aside, I was like, oh, maybe this is a new source of incremental revenue.
Yeah, full page ads for insane people.
We're trying to worm their way back.
Nice. It's a great ad product.
I don't know. Also, final thing is, did you see Forbes is getting into the prediction markets?
Yeah, I don't. No comment.
No comment. Other thing.
Prediction markets are going to be woven through every piece of content everywhere. We predicted that. We know that's going to happen. I know you think that the externalities are overwhelming. I think prediction markets are way less nefarious than sports gambling, where the house takes so much money. People will do it. Why does a dog lick its balls?
I think this could also be filed under that, which is, I had PTSD when I got this email from Yahoo, that Yahoo is back with search. It's got Yahoo Scout, which is a new AI answer engine. You
tried it? It's cool.
I haven't tried it yet. I've heard mixed things about it. I don't think people use, look, if you have a front page like they have still, and they have all of that built-in distribution, you're going to get some people who stumble upon your search product. I don't know. Tell me if I'm wrong. This is I think it's fun that they're doing something.
I don't think that they're suggesting that they're going to take back the mantle, but I think that it's their product. It's when you're using Clawdbot or advanced LLM. Gemini natively inside of your Chrome browser, to me feels, infinitely more powerful than, a fairly anodyne Yahoo answer engine that's not unlike Perplexity. It's really just the modernization of that surface. But I think that, you're seeing with them the kind of weaving of AI through the entire, Yahoo surface area, so that it's better at getting you financial information and aggregating up, a perspective on a company inside of finance. It's better at comparing odds in sports or helping you with your fantasy thing inside of Yahoo Sports. It's better at summarizing your emails inside of Yahoo Email. And it's better at, curating and aggregating news for you, if you're a Yahoo homepage user. All of those things, the interface layer just gets better with AI. And search is the purest, go direct and get pure extraction around what you want. If you try it, I think it's called Scout, you said? Yeah, Scout.
Yeah, Yahoo Scout.
It works fine. And I think for a lot of people, it's going to be seen as an incremental improvement into the Yahoo interface. So I think that's what they have to keep doing. Maybe along the way, they'll find a breakout product that, a single breakout product could be worth, as much as the entire Yahoo. So keep using that distribution, keep modernizing it, keep trying to retain, your base, your large base of customers. And along the way, look for something that's going to maybe, accelerate a transformation. I think it's the right play. And I think that they've done a good job of cleaning it up.
Okay, good news. Final thing before we get to good product. I don't know if you saw, but Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent took a shot at Swiss food, and particularly the Swiss German food. He said, after a few days of Swiss German food, I may switch to bugs because the Davos crowd was not nice to him. And I have to say, I don't agree with the Trump administration, probably 99 out of 10 times, or 99 out of 10 times, actually. On this one, I'm kind of with it. I think Swiss food is kind of horrific.
Well, there's that great restaurant that serves roasty and veal, and I'm going there in 2 weeks to Switzerland. The restaurant is called Kronenhau. Amazing vibes, and they make incredible roasty, which is, as far as I can tell, the one reason that Scott's wrong. What's more interesting about Scott is how his rhetoric has been transformed by Trump, and now he slings shit at people all the time. I liked how he attacked Gavin Newsom and called him
he's figured out he's become an interesting character, I guess I would say, because he's been able to straddle the line of he's an institutionalist at the end of the day. I mean, the guy came out of Soros capital, and now he's a populist. He steps in it sometimes because, he's in a populist era, and he's the farthest thing from a populist. So he did make a comment about about the real estate situation, that a lot of older people have 5, 8, 12 houses that they depend on for their retirement, and they are on a fixed income. So, that was not great. All right, should we do good product?
Okay. I would go to something maybe thematically aligned and slightly conceptual this week. I think that part of the theme of the episode was, the confusion that we all feel between, right and wrong, where we're going, who to cheer for. Maybe that's not that hard, but who to trust, most importantly. And these are wicked times. And so, I think that the answer, the simplest answer would be the most obvious to someone like my wife, and it would always be community and people. Community always brings, a warmth that, on a cold, snowy New York day, that everything's going to be okay. I was reminded last night, I played tennis last night with a friend, and we sat at the bar, and it was, in what otherwise would have been a real May day, it was a great thing to do, just to hang with someone, play a game, have a beer. And then I got home, and my wife and two of our good friends, she typically does it every Wednesday, which I think is a great thing to do, is to have, routines. But they come over, they order food, and they play Rummikub. Sometimes there's 3 people, sometimes there's 6 people. It's an old-fashioned board game, friends hanging around, eating, Thai takeout. I think it's really wonderful.
And it's an old school board game, am I not? People out there, us, the Gen Z listeners, there were only 8 board games that existed. We didn't have that many board games. It was Risk, Monopoly, Rummikub. There weren't that many, I feel like. Boggle.
Even the podcast, this notion of podcasting versus the network mind. The problem with on-demand media, and certainly manifested in something like YouTube that I watch a lot of, is it's hyper-personal. It's not very community-based. So even making the effort to sit down with your family or someone in your family and watch a show together is the most basic form of communal living. And if you go to your YouTube feed on your television, which would be my default if I wanted to just, turn off, it's like shit that, no one else would ever want to watch. The algorithmically driven media stream is very personal. It's not a social thing. And, it's totally tuned to your interests. So that's the place, the warm fire of the communally consumed television show is really important to people.
I agree.
Anyway, community is a good product.
Community is a good product, will always be a good product. Difficult to pull off. A lot of publishers want to get into community. I had a breakfast yesterday with a lot of leading publishers, and they're all talking about trying to move more into quote unquote community-based models. Very difficult to pull off. These are tough businesses, and it's particularly difficult to pull off when you have been not in that mindset whatsoever. All of your DNA was about running a business. And I hear it a lot of times from people who had these page view machines. I mean, we saw like BI, they're the CRO, Maggie Milanow left, and Maggie's great. And they are in a difficult position at BI. And they've talked about moving to an events like model, which I guess is like the easy way to say we're going to do community. And I don't know if they're going to be able to pull it off, because the brand was built in a different way. I hope it. I have still friends there. I hope they can find a path, but I don't know if they can.
The non-paid text model, unless it's buttressed by something, really differentiated and monetizable, you're in deep trouble. If you rely on free scale and what was largely text content creation, unless you have a robust video business or an events business or a merch business or an affiliate business, you're in deep trouble.
Yeah, you need some kind of side business that's going to fund this. And when your organizing principle was, and look, I get it, it was a different era. Henry used to put this slide up. I saw him one time, like actually in Europe, do it, where he compared the cost of producing content at BI to the cost of producing content at the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. And the bet was always, look, these guys spend way too much money creating content. We're going to create content at a far lower cost. Is it going to be of the same quality? Well, no. I mean, they didn't say that part, but that was like the reality. But it's going to be free, and free always wins in the market. And programmatic was thought of at the time as the way that you build these businesses. And now that's not the case anymore. So trying to rebuild that business for a different time, it's just by definition going to be.
Yeah, my observation there was, I shared with you, is bifurcating a media business against free and paid in these times is almost impossible.
Yeah.
Very hard.
Yeah. And that's what they tried to do it. They tried to like be half B2B, half cheese content, cheese related content, a lot of fondue. Speaking of Switzerland, not a fondue fan.
That's it for this episode of People versus Algorithms, where each week we uncover patterns shaping media, culture, and technology. Big thanks, as always, to our producer, Vanya Arsenov. She always makes us a little clearer and more understandable, and we appreciate her very, very much. If you're enjoying these conversations, we'd love for you to leave us a review. It helps us get the word out and keeps our community growing. Remember, you can find People vs. Algorithms on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and now on YouTube. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week.
Okay.
Good stuff. You want to come over for a sauna?